Hi, my name's Phil and I'm bringing an old canoe stern motorboat back to life. She's 32 foot long, 88 years old, and her name is Jabiru. In a previous episode I promised to talk about the engine, so I guess now's the time.
As you might have seen, when I acquired her, Jabiru was fitted with a single-cylinder 10 horsepower Chinese diesel, which had been marinised in a pretty shoddy manner. I found a replacement engine in this D35-2 BMW Marine diesel. This is what it looked like when it arrived from Victoria during COVID lockdown last year. The saltwater cooling pump was in a bucket, with the engine on a pallet, and there was also a cardboard box of other pieces. Around this time I fell off a pallet of bricks at work and was on crutches for several months. The engine sat idle until earlier this year. By then I'd drawn up the boat as seen in episode 6, so a decision about whether or not the BMW engine was a worthwhile purchase had to be confirmed either way. This came to a head as the width of the engine beds must match the mounts on the chosen power plant, and I was now at the point where new engine beds had to be fitted. The old ones were a bit rotten and too narrowly spaced, as well as in the wrong position in the boat. I made up a temporary mount for the engine on top of a pallet so it wouldn't fall over while I was test running it.
I made mention of this engine, I don't know, 3 episodes ago, that I'd bought a D35-2 BMW Marine diesel. It's got a closed circuit cooling system with a heat exchanger that salt water goes through. I bought it sight unseen off, I think it was either eBay or Facebook Marketplace, I forget which. It was in Victoria. New South Wales was locked up, and so was Victoria at the time, so I bought it sight unseen. The price wasn't too bad, so hopefully it's going to be an engine that works. The first thing that upset me a little bit was that it was in reverse gear, and I couldn't get it out of reverse gear, pulled and pushed. So what I did was I put this piece of flat bar on the coupling, and then I'll try and mount the camera here and see if we can see me playing with it. Anyway, I put a lever on the lever arm, gave that a bit of a shove, and it went into neutral, which is just fantastic. So it'll now also go into forward, and it's driving from the engine, because if I pull the gear you can see that the engine's turning over, and if I pull it out of gear again, if I can, it's a bit hard because the lever's very short. There we go. It's out again now. So of course the engine's not turning anymore. So that's a very happy state of play, that the gearbox does seem to be working. So that was my first, one of my first concerns. The other concern was that I'd been assured that the engine was fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. So when it came up, the saltwater cooling pump was in a bucket full of parts. It had new bearings and new seals all ready to go in, and this plate had rusted away, and this is a new one that they had made, but it hadn't been fitted. So couldn't find hoses, so I had to make up out of bits that I could find. Hose connecting that to that was already there. And at the back end there was this pipe would come up, and then there was a U-shaped hose connecting this cooling water exit to the exhaust pipe. So the first thing that happened was there was a bracket holding this here, and then there was a rubber connection between there, a rubber connection between there and there. So the bracket, when I tried to take it off, the bolt was totally frozen, so it broke pretty easily actually. And now we've got a water leak there, which you can see a couple of drips there. So all this stuff is going to have to be taken off, like the exhaust manifold will be taken off and sandblasted, and the engine block and head will be sandblasted. The gearbox will be taken off and sandblasted and all given a good coatings. But the deal today is I'm going to try and start the engine. Haven't done that before, so I just have to connect up diesel, electrics. It came with a loom and a dashboard fitting. So I'll see if I can get it out of this box. So this loom was what was in the boat that it came out of. So it has a rev counter, a voltmeter, a temperature gauge, and it has various warning things here. I'm not quite sure what they all are. Battery, water temperature, don't know what that one is, something. And there's, looks like a fuse there. Looks like a switch actually, but I don't know. Anyway, I haven't looked at this at all. It's got a switch, a key turn on. So I'm guessing when you turn that key on and you've got a battery connected to it all, it'll try and start the engine. Don't know what that's for. Haven't looked into any of this stuff. So it'll be something for us to see. Now that's, I thought that was a bit burnt, but I think it's just sort of masticky, gluey stuff, gooey stuff. So this connector there connects up to the engine to that connector. So I guess they will fit together. I'll put a battery on it and we'll see if we can start it. So when I've got that all connected up, I'll bring the camera back. I've got the charger on, I've got the water on, I've got the battery on. And I've got this ready to go. So I'll give it a go. Almost gonna go. Where's that oil coming out of? Well, there's a couple of bolts missing and it's pumping oil out. when I talked about there being an engine leak before, I didn't mention exactly where it was coming from. You can see that there's two socket head screws which look a different colour to the others. They were out and oil was pumping out of that position, so as soon as I put them in it stopped. Another place where there was oil coming out was this area here has been rusted through. That's a sheet metal, pressed metal timing cover, and it's rusted through there, so I'll have to attack that with the welder and clean it up so that it's as good as new again. But you can see everything's a bit rusty and unkept. It's been in a boat for a while, I guess, probably 20 or 30 years, and it just needs a general clean-up. The stop button here has a housing which is cracked, not quite sure why, whether there's something inside that that's corroded, I don't know. And as I said before, also the regulator, the alternator is questionable, as well as the length of this belt. Looks like it might be actually the wrong belt. So as it goes on, the saltwater inlet comes in through a pipe through the gearbox and then around to this saltwater pump which is driven off the engine, and then up through a heat exchanger which keeps the cooling water in the closed system cool. I guess the heat exchanger in there will need to be cleaned, although looking at the way it ran during the engine run, it doesn't seem to be clogged at all. It seems to have a good flow through it. And the other thing I've got to be concerned about is whether the saltwater system might create some electrolysis through having these different metals in there. This bronze pipe was originally part of the system, so maybe it's not so bad to have copper there, I don't know. Anyway, a friend who's in the shipping industry warned me about that and said you better make sure that you don't start suffering electrolysis, because these aluminium parts would be the first to go. I'm going to take the sump off and just make sure that I haven't got any oil leaks. I'm also going to take the timing cover off, of course, to repair it. So that'll be another major place where there could have been an oil leak. I bought new engine beds. These are pretty tired looking things, engine mounts I should say. And apart from that, it all just needs a good paint. With that alternator, I'll be taking that as it is on this pallet, put it in the trailer, take it up to a auto electrician, and he can tell me whether that is actually working or whether I've got a slipping belt. The tacho, another little problem, the tachometer doesn't start to work until the engine spins over about 1500 RPM. So there's another little thing. Maybe that's something that I don't even need to look at. But I need to check that all the oil seals are okay, and of course when the sump and the timing cover comes off, I'll renew the gaskets to make sure there's no water or oil leaks into the boat. And I'll be replacing every piece of flexible hose on the whole engine. So it's got various little bits of hose here which are probably supplied originally with the engine, so Lord knows how long they'll actually last. However, I'll be leaving all that work for the time being. Put the cover back on this engine and I'll leave it there. I need to get the engine beds into the boat. Now I'm confident that this will be the engine we'll use, and I need to finalise the refastening of the hull before I can turn it over and fair up the outside and glass and epoxy it. Before I do that even, I have to fix the side decks. The camber is terrible. It's too steep to walk on, and I think I need side decks that are a little bit wider. They're about maybe 7 inches, 180 millimetres, something like that wide, just enough for a foot. So I'd like them to be about 4 or 5 inches wider and a little bit flatter. So that'll all happen before I roll the boat over, and then I can get on with the glass and epoxy. After that happens and the boat goes back upright, of course I need to build a cabin and fit out the inside. So not a small amount of work, but it'll be great when it's done. So see you next time.